Ukraine cannot function without Western support, ammunition and money. It's fighting for its life. Both Russia and Ukraine are exhausting themselves in pursuing this war, and it may be a question of who cracks first. In war, you need three things: money, money and money. Join me, Darasz, for how we got here.
On Sunday, the European Union announced the transfer of additional 4.2 billion euros in financial assistance to Ukraine. The funds will be used for, among others, the management of public finances, aiding Ukraine's energy sector, and demining. While the human cost of the war in Ukraine has made it into mainstream discourses, the material and financial burden of the war is less widely known. The outflow of millions of refugees has severely impacted Ukraine's economy. Conscripting hundreds of thousands of working-age men has also put a strain on the business sector. Ukrainian GDP declined sharply in 2022 when the war began, falling by 24% compared to 2021, or some $142 billion. In 2023, the GDP rose marginally. Kiev's debt now makes up some 88% of GDP. Ukraine spends 37% of its GDP on military needs. This has put a severe strain on the government's tax revenue. Western nations have provided Ukraine with financial aid to keep the government functional. The Kiel Institute sets the value of financial aid provided to Ukraine up to June of 2024 at more than 81.4 billion euros. The Ukrainian armed forces have been able to match the much larger and better funded Russian military in combat capability, holding them off for more than 2 years so far. This would not be possible without billions of dollars worth of arms provided to Ukraine by Western countries. According to the Kiel Institute, Ukraine received more than 104 billion euros of military assistance from NATO members. This data may be somewhat misleading at times, as estimating the value of old military equipment is difficult. While decades-old tanks are certainly not worth their initial price, there isn't a common market for retired military equipment, which would allow for more precise assessment of its worth. Finally, the fighting caused large-scale destruction of residential buildings and infrastructure. The cost of rebuilding Ukraine following the end of the war has been estimated by Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal at 750 billion euros and is rising with each day the fighting goes on.
Our guest today is Tomasz Pisula, an international affairs expert and a former member of the Atlantic Council. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you for the invitation.
Ukraine and the economy of a country at war, that's going to be our topic today. The Ukrainian the finance minister, went over to the United States recently and chided the Americans for being slow in the latest tranche of money that they were promised. Is this a sign of the desperation that the Ukrainian economy is in? It's beholden to United States drip-feed money, European money to buy ammunition, all that stuff, to support the economy, the pay of the civil servants, teachers, that sort of thing.
I would say the principal problem is the supply of arms and supply of ammunition, and this is the principal problem of Ukraine. They need tools and they need means to defend themselves, and Ukrainians have shown that they have enough determination, that they have enough guts, and they have enough skill and ingenuity to defend themselves, and to be frank, to defend Europe from Russia's aggression, because this is, I would say, a proxy war in between Russia and the West.
Yes.
So the Ukrainians are doing very best they can to defend themselves and to defend the EU. At the same time, they need technology, they need ammunition, and I would say this is the principal issue that any Ukrainian representative outside of Ukraine is trying to solve. of. I was told recently by someone who has served 2.5 years on Ukraine's battlefields that the discrepancy between the rate of fire between Russia and Ukraine is about 10-1. Russia is just raining down on Ukraine with rounds, with ammunition. Ukraine can hardly keep up the pace of defending itself. So whatever money there is, I would say the principal cost that Ukraine is bearing is weaponry.
The hardware.
Yes, and of course economy is important. At the same time, Ukraine is, I would say, the Ukraine's exports are actually either on the same level as they were prior to the war, or they are actually exceeding the value from before the war. Of course, let's say the international trade routes have been reorganized. At the same time, economy, I would not say is the principal problem of Ukraine. The principal problem is the physical aggression and the need to defend themselves from Russia.
That can be managed, but if you don't have any ammunition or money to buy ammunition, it's over.
You can, if you defend yourself, you can then pay for whatever needs you had, but in the first place, you have to defend yourself.
What is the effect of these recurrent calls on the American government, on the EU governments, via the governments to the taxpayers who fund this? Is there a Ukraine fatigue setting in?
Of course there is, and it was only to be expected. And of course the American taxpayers, Polish taxpayers, and actually I find this a irony of situation. The German taxpayers are complaining about the cost of supporting Ukraine. At the same time, Germany was the principal country that was benefiting from the cheap gas exports from Russia, which in the end helped to fund the war in Ukraine. So at this moment, I would say the most skeptical towards helping Ukraine are the Germans, who have benefited the most from the trade with Russia. I remember speaking to one of the advisors to CDU-CSU parliamentary group in about 2006, 2007, and I remember this gentleman convincing me that the official policy of CDU-CSU was this development through interdependence. That Germany was to be dependent on gas supplies from Russia. At the same time, Russia was becoming dependent on German money, and hence the two can flower.
Synergy.
Exactly. I said that this is the synergy. I know this type of market synergy. It reminds me very much of a synergy between a crack addict and a crack dealer. And there's not a question who has the upper hand in that situation. At that moment, let's say my interlocutor was not impressed. I would say, looking from the perspective that I was right, that Russia had the upper hand, made money on gas exports to Europe. Germany benefited vastly from cheap gas supplies. At the same time, at this moment, they are the principal country that opposes or is reluctant to help Ukraine.
And you can make the case that is the chief relationship in European history, Russia and Germany?
Well, I would say, I don't know if this is the chief relationship, but let's say each time that it became dominant, it meant bad news for Poland. So I'm not very supportive.
The latest 4.2 billion euros, the tranche of money that's being transferred over to Ukraine. How long will that last, and what is that being used for? Is it just, like you said, a military expenditure on military ammunition, hardware, and the like?
If you look
and how will it be paid back?
Okay. If you look at the statistics, the EU claims that it spent or made available over 112 billion, the equivalent of 112 billion US dollars in financial aid. Some of that, let's say about a third of that, is for military purposes. The rest is for whatever needs of Ukrainian society and Ukrainian economy there are. If you look at the US support to Ukraine, we're looking at about $70 billion, out of which three-quarters would be mostly in military aid. And I would say, of course, Ukraine has to come up with ways of paying it back. I don't know if those would be, because some of that money are kind of low interest loans, some of them are kind of investment and investment support, kind of complicated financial schemes.
Creative accounting, or?
Well, no, I wouldn't say creative accounting, but things that are perhaps too complicated to explain now, and perhaps not all of our viewers would be interested in listening to that. That money will be paid, and of course Ukraine has tremendous economic potential with the with the population of 50 million and incredibly an incredible land that can be used for agriculture. It has every mean to flower to take benefit of peacetime and free trade with Europe.
Well, I suppose it has to win the war first, though.
That's the issue, and this is why I would say that whatever money we're spending in Ukraine, it's not enough. And secondly, and this is something that I would like our viewers to remember, that it would be 3, 4, 5 times more costly to defend ourselves from Russia if Ukraine loses. And this is, let's say, whatever costs we are incurring right now to support Ukraine, it will still be cheaper and it will still be to our benefit than to have a border with Russia and to be threatened and to think whether we have to, as Poland, defend our territory or whether we have to send soldiers to defend Baltic states, because they're the next.
Is that a case that's being made in Western Europe? Is it fairly clear in Eastern Europe, or in the West? In the West, it's more unclear.
I've seen many articles about Baltic states kind of being next in line, or Poland being next in line. Well, Vladimir Putin, I mean, for one, he does keep his word, and he made his ambitions very clear, and he's explained that his intentions towards Ukraine for many years now, and he has there's not a place for independent Baltic states, and there's not a place for independent Poland in Putin's plan. So we really need to get our act together and help Ukraine, help them win the war, and this is the only cheap option for us, I would say. Is
the investment that we're making in Ukraine there to stop Ukraine losing rather than getting it to win? Is there a reticence on the part of the West to go the full way, to see the clarity of the logic of their argument, like you just pointed out?
I would say for some of the specialists, especially in the US, the vision of Russia losing altogether is not a positive scenario, because let's say some of the circles in the West consider Russia as an important element in the, let's say, global state of affairs, and let's say a weight that can be used to balance China.
Yes.
So I would say that there would be people on Capitol Hill saying, let us not let Russia lose altogether, because then they'll be immediately taken over by Chinese economy or Chinese politics.
It's already been taken over by Chinese.
Well, I would say war is helping that. I mean, definitely since the beginning of the war, Chinese sphere of interest has expanded, not diminished. So. Yes.
Let's move on to the social and economic fabric of a country at war. Okay, Ukraine is fighting its battle for existence. The moral case, as you put it just now, is clear. What are the practical effects on a country like Ukraine? How do we see this drip feed of, or the stopping of funds from its pre-war trade? How is that manifest itself in Ukrainian daily life? And also, just to add to that, what about our picture of Ukraine as a fairly corrupt country? Even before 2014, are steps being made, or enough steps being made to remedy that?
You've been extremely polite to me, making this distinction between the moral case and the practical case. I would say my argument for helping Ukraine is also very practical, which is that if we don't help them now, it will be more expensive in the years to come. So here I would say I have the advantage of making both moral and practical argument. Having said that, yes, Ukraine had its problems. They were mostly related to the fact that Ukraine is a country that emerged from 70 years of Russia's or USSR's post-Soviet occupation. I mean, look at Poland now and look at Poland 30 years ago and the levels of corruption then and levels of corruption now. Going west means, our politics and our social affairs will get normalized, corruption will diminish. Let's hope that this would be the case with Ukraine. Of course, some of that happens. Of course, this is also, let's say, typical to wartime economies, that people make money on arms supplies. Yes, of course, it does happen. At the same time, let's say there's a broader picture, and the broader picture is that we need independent Ukraine. Why? For our political needs, for our economic needs, we need Ukraine as a trading partner. We need Ukraine to keep supplying grain to Africa. Otherwise, Africa will starve, and Africans would start coming to Europe, and we'll have to, look after them as refugees. So it's stuff like that. Ukraine is necessary. They have clearly shown the intention to go west. They have defended the Western European and NATO's aspirations. They have defended that with blood, over the years. So let's give them that chance. Let's help them with that. At the same time, let's say you meant the kind of drip feed of Western support. One of the let's say bad consequences of slowing down arms supplies and then slowing down this drip feed was that conscripts who were sent to the battlefront, Ukrainian conscripts, they started feeling as they were cannon fodder, that they are being sent to the battlefront. At the same time, there isn't really enough ammunition to defend themselves. So is there a reason for us to go to be defending our country? And actually now we see the waves of let's say popular the Ukrainians are no longer happy conscripts. I mean, people are rather kind of drafted and made to go.
Yes, I've heard of the crisis in
rather than volunteering.
Manning levels.
And this is the crisis that was actually induced by the slowdown of military aid.
A final question to you: how much money does Ukraine need per year to keep the machine, the Ukrainian military machine, rolling?
Goodness, that's a...
It's going to have to make the case for it in Washington and in London and other places.
I don't think that any of us civilians would know. And actually, I don't think that such data is actually available because we can only, let's say, the rocket systems and the planes are extremely expensive. Yeah. Let me put it this way. It's not always that, let's say, the most sophisticated and the most expensive weapons are the best. I was told by, again, people from the front lines that there is an issue with some of the Western tanks, for example, who are very expensive. They are filled with electronics and so on. At the same time, for example, they are too heavy for Ukrainian soil, and they have a problem with moving around. At the same time, some cheaper tanks like the ones that Poland has supplied, the modernized T-72 tanks, they seem to be, let's say, optimum range in terms of price, capability, ease of operation. So it's not always the most expensive stuff. At the same time, I would say that the rocket systems, this is a bottomless pit. I mean, you can spend as much the drones. By the way, I've also heard that the Russian drone systems, that they aren't bad. Let's say the technology is also on. That Russians actually do have technology that they can use, and they are using it right now in Ukraine. Well, basically, I'd say, to sum up, I would say that whatever we're spending,
it's a war.
It's a good deal. No. It is a good deal for us, because if Ukrainians don't put an end to this aggression, then we would have to, and it would be more costly to have it on our soil.
Sure. I mean, that case is cast iron. Tomasz Pisula, thank you very much for coming to this program.
Pleasure. Thank you, sir.
So that's all we have time for today. Join us next time for How We Got Here.